Hi, I'm Caitlin Gaulding, and this is my presentation on Carole Van Camp. Carole Van Camp is currently an associate professor at the University of North Carolina, Wilmington. She is a practicing behavior analyst as well as a researcher in the field of applied behavior analysis. Her research is focused on physical activity, severe behavior disorders, and other issues present in applied behavior analysis. She mentors undergraduate and graduate students on projects that focus on the use of applied behavior analysis. The research Van Camp has conducted has the primary goal of improving the lives of children. Her research has been published in journals such as the Journal of Applied Behavior Analysis, Behavior Therapy, and Journal of Behavioral Education. She also was a member of the Board of Editors for the Journal of Applied Behavior Analysis. I've collected 5 published research articles written by Van Camp, with the purpose of this presentation being to further explain her contributions to applied behavior analysis. Within the literature that I found, the most common element was the use and effectiveness of Fitbits. Throughout her career, Van Camp has used applied behavior analysis to better understand physical activity in children, particularly how interventions and Fitbits affect the physical activity of elementary students during recess. She consistently found that the Fitbit is a reliable tool for measuring physical activity. 2 studies that did not fit this element instead looked at case studies where individuals had severe behavioral problems. The first of the 2 studies had the purpose of understanding alternative data analysis to understand the complete response to intervention. Similarly, the second of these 2 studies was focused on alternative intervention methods. If I were to interview Carole Van Camp, there are 3 questions I would ask her. First, what first sparked your interest in the use of Fitbits? Then, if a school were to have the funding for such a project, do you believe it would be beneficial to invest in Fitbits for all students? Finally, with the increase in technology, would you be interested in recreating the studies with increasing physical activity with adults in smartwatches such as the Apple Watch? The first study looked at intervention to increase physical activity during unstructured recess time. Understanding the health benefits of moderate to vigorous physical activity and knowledge that students in public schools are not engaging in enough moderate to vigorous physical activity, Hayes and Van Camp conducted a study to determine the effects of intervention on the increase of physical activity during unstructured recess time in 2015. There were 6 participants in the study, each a female at the age of 8. The students were given a Fitbit in 20 minutes of unstructured recess, where they could not see their step count for baseline. When intervention occurred, students were allowed to see their steps and were given a goal to reach in the 20-minute period. They were given 1 immediate tangible reward if the goal was met. Their final data concluded that the intervention did increase the step count for children, but Hayes and Van Camp note that there are several limitations to their study, including data loss and the type of reinforcements used. This article was chosen for its real-life application of behavior interventions used in a school setting. Although the participants were all the same age and gender, this study is a great start to having a better understanding of how interventions and reinforcements can change the behavior of students. The next study was a replication and extension of a previous study conducted. Van Camp and Berth conducted a study to both replicate and extend a study that was previously conducted in 2011 with the purpose of evaluating the observational system for recording physical activity by monitoring heart rates during physical activity in children. They extended the number of behaviors performed within the physical activity levels and included a Fitbit monitor to produce reliability in the steps per minute count. They had 4 children, 3 males and 1 female, between the ages of 6 and 13, participate in various leveled activities at a local park with playground equipment and the use of open space within the park. Using the same pedometer and heart rate monitor as the study previously conducted, as well as the Fitbits, the participants completed 15 activities derived from the observational system for recording physical activity, 3 during each level. With each of the 5 levels, the intensity of the activity increased. Van Camp and Berth found that once the participants reached level 4 activity, higher heart rates were present, and each of the activities qualified to be moderate to vigorous physical activity. They additionally found that the steps per minute count was less reliable on the pedometers than the Fitbit. This article was chosen for its extensive information regarding levels of physical activity. This article also relates to another study conducted by Van Camp, further suggesting that the results of this study could be used to increase activity in children while at play. The next study looked at the Fitbit and physical activity. With hopes to replicate and extend the findings of their previous study from 2015, they evaluated if Fitbits could be used to give objective measurements of physical activity during structured and unstructured recess time. In this study, they assessed whether or not different levels of physical activity could be detected by the Fitbit without disrupting the current activity during recess period, and if moderate to vigorous physical activity was reached. Participants, 15 second grade students, were assigned a Fitbit to be worn during recess. Recess began by taking laps around the playground. The participants were then instructed to either have free play for the remainder of recess, have a structured activity for the remainder of recess, or have free play followed by a structured activity. After data collection, the researchers found that the Fitbit is a reliable instrument for assessing steps per minute during recess. All children showed the most steps per minute during their laps at the beginning of recess, followed by the structured activity of soccer, free play, and the structured activity of tag. This article was chosen due to its relation of the previous article discussed. This study, conducted by Van Camp, consistently shows that the Fitbit is a reliable tool for measuring physical activity. The first case study presented was about alternative data analysis. The researchers understand that the traditional method of using calculated means to give the result of data could obscure information in a study that is relevant to finding responses of participants. In this study, the researchers used one case study to analyze the use of alternative data analysis to create a better understanding of responses to reinforcements. The case study was conducted with a 21-year-old participant who had been diagnosed with, quote, severe mental retardation, unquote, and was referred to the study in hopes of reducing her behavior of screaming. The frequency and duration of her screaming was collected during a school day. A functional analysis was conducted, and to reduce the behavior of screaming, there were 5 conditions conducted: attention, tangible, demand, no interaction, and play. During the attention, tangible, and demand conditions, potential reinforcers were delivered for 20 seconds for screams that lasted at least 1 second. The participants' screaming data was analyzed 4 different ways for the tangible and demand conditions. When looking only at the averages, the data suggested that the screaming did not decrease. However, the number of reinforcers decreased along the sessions, suggesting that access to leisure items that were not being used intentionally as reinforcers were still reinforcing her behavior of screaming. Since continuous schedules are often used in baseline sessions and during a functional analysis, understanding that changes in response can indicate that it is not due to the condition presented is important. Although this article was written 18 years ago, the information presented is still relevant in the application of applied behavior analysis. This article was chosen because of the case study indicating that our typical analysis of data may not be true to what is actually happening when studying a student's behavior. The next case study dealt with self-injurious behavior. Researchers conducted a case study on a 13-year-old male, quote, diagnosed with autism and severe mental retardation, unquote, who was admitted to an inpatient unit for the severe self-injurious behavior of putting dangerous substances in his eyes. His caretakers eliminated his access to the dangerous items at home, but could not prevent access to items in all settings. During the functional analysis, it was found that his self-injurious behavior was being automatically reinforced. This type of self-injurious behavior is difficult to treat because the reinforcement cannot be easily manipulated by the researchers. Thus, environmental enrichment was provided during this treatment. A preference assessment was conducted to find what his most preferred item was. 3 phases were conducted. In the first phase, the participant was allowed equal access to the dangerous item, the preferred item, and the non-preferred item with the therapist present. In the second phase, the participant had greater access and easier reach to the preferred item than to the dangerous item with the therapist present. In the final phase, different sessions had the therapist present or absent with unequal access to the dangerous item. It was found that the use of environmental enrichment was able to significantly decrease his participation in self-injurious behaviors. This article was also written 18 years ago, but is still relevant to working with students who participate in self-injurious behavior. It gives a brief overview of what environmental enrichment may look like in a clinical setting that could easily be transferred to a classroom setting. Conclusion. From what I have learned by reading the published research of Carole Van Camp, I have a better understanding of how useful techniques of applied behavior analysis can be in a variety of settings. Her research on the use of Fitbits and physical activity could make a difference in the health of students if implicated in school systems. Additionally, her case study research is still relevant 18 years after its publication, giving solutions to both data collection and the treatment of self-injurious behaviors. Here are my references.